tonight the unspoken torment of the tsunami's youngest victims.
And then fire came from the ocean, and everything started burning around us.
And the Brits trying to mend the broken hearts and minds.
So her house was literally moved by the water down the road and is now in a completely different place. So they haven't been able to go into it yet.
So your house started here and it moved all the way down here.
1 kilometer.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Over the past week, Japan has had to brace itself again as more tsunami warnings were issued. As the mammoth clear-up continues, a small army of volunteers is fighting to repair the damage that's harder to heal to the hearts and minds of the country's children who witnessed the disaster a month ago. ITV News correspondent Emma Murphy has travelled to the worst-hit areas to meet the children of the tsunami.
When the tsunami swamped the shoreline of Japan on March the 11th, it claimed more than 13,000 lives. It wrenched parent from child, child from parent. 1,100 children died or are still missing, a number that's expected to rise. It ruined the homes of 230,000 families. And with constant aftershocks, it surely must have caused extraordinary trauma amongst the nation's youngest.
We all have assumptions about the world being safe enough. We have assumptions about certain people who are going to stay around in our lives, assumptions about certain places being safe. And I think what's interesting about this particular event is it's undermined that assumption in so many ways. So usually you expect the ground to stay firm underneath your feet. You usually expect your house to offer you some protection and your home to be a safe place.
I'm journeying along the northeast coast of Japan to find out for myself the impact this disaster has had, not just on the landscape, but on the children who must try and live within it. I'm starting my journey in Rikuzen, Takata, where it's thought more than 2,000 people perished. Houses, shops, toys, clothes vanished in an instant here. So many youngsters' worlds turned upside down. The only structures still standing are built of steel and concrete.
I was at my grandfather's house. The big earthquake happened, and I thought it will be dangerous to be there. So I tried to escape from there and ran to my house. Then I looked down and I saw a wave swallowing the town.
Kayo and his friend Akari sing about love. He was emailing his best friend the night before he died in the tsunami. She is to attend her sister's funeral tomorrow. They're living through a surreal and painful time.
So many people died in the tsunami. Many of them died when they were trying to help other people. Or some people died in the evacuation centers that was supposed to be safe places. More people should have been able to survive. It's frustrating that I can't blame anybody because it's a natural disaster.
For Kayo, it's the evenings that frighten him the most.
I wake up at night every time I feel an earthquake, and I look down at the city to make sure that the tsunami is not coming. It's very hard to get rid of this fear.
Fear is something that has gripped the children of the tsunami. Many are living in a heightened state of anxiety. There have been more than 400 aftershocks since March the 11th. Doctors have warned of complicated emotional fallout. Here at Daiichi Junior School, there's a lot of work going on to try and distract tiny minds. Today, Shuntaro and his school friends have been bussed in from a neighbouring town to play with the children who've no alternative but to stay here. Shuntaro has come to help, but his confidence too has been shaken.
I'm very surprised because I never expected this disaster to cause such massive damage to this country.
It's difficult to comprehend the traumatic effect the disaster must have had on some of the very small children when teenagers like Shuntaro talk of the moment that he thought all was lost.
When I felt the first big vibration, I thought, this is the end of this country. And I had this empty feeling, this lost feeling.
That sense of loss is still the biggest thing that everyone is coping with in this city. For the adults picking through the rubble, they've lost something else. As the battle against the nuclear plant continues, they've lost the certainty that the very air their children breathe will be safe in the future. I journey south along the coast to Kesennuma. Following the earthquake and tsunami, fuel that supplied the fishing boats caught fire. The port burned for days. Extraordinary scenes from Kesennuma were caught on amateur cameras as the drama unfolded. Mike Maha-King has lived in Japan for 5 years. Hi Mike, I'm Emma.
Nice to meet you.
What a long journey. Within an hour of the tsunami, he felt compelled to help the disaster's most vulnerable victims.
We brought in...
What a lot of stuff.
Yes.
My goodness.
Managed to fit it all up.
So is this a washing machine?
Yes, this is something that one shelter, an elementary school, actually specifically requested. They have some clothes, but they have simply nowhere to wash it, so it's either bring them lots of new clothes or a washing machine. Okay.
Piece by piece, little by little, Mike and his charity Smile Kids Japan is helping families to rebuild their lives here. At Kesennuma Elementary School, classrooms have become dormitories. Desks have been moved to make way for bedding. It's typical of what's happening all along the coast. The places children usually associate with learning have become places to sleep.
So obviously a lot of the stuff you've brought here is hygiene related, wet wipes and anti-bac.
Yep, definitely.
That must be so important in these.
It's crucial when you've got 100 people living in a sort of gym like this. It's personal hygiene, and obviously Japanese people, I know anyone in the world, personal hygiene is very important, but the details like that, don't necessarily think of it as a sort of first response, but they're just as important as food and water.
In the grounds of the school, which now serves as their home, I came across Haidee Aki with his 6-year-old daughter Anna. Many parents were separated from their children given that the tsunami happened early in the afternoon.
I was at nursery, and after the earthquake, I went to the community center. We evacuated, and then everyone from the nursery went onto the roof of the community center. And then fire came from the ocean, and everything started burning around us. And then we went down the ladder. Then we stayed on the first and second floor of the community center. And a self-defense helicopter brought me here.
Haidee Aki invited me to spend some time with him. He showed me what's left of his town. How can you believe in a future for your children amongst all of this?
It's a bad dream.
It's a bad dream, he tells me. He points out where the ships ended up inland.
Many ships.
The sea that gave this boatman his livelihood wrecked his vessel. It killed his uncle, his auntie, and his father-in-law. He took me to see what was left of his home.
Gosh, what a lot of devastation.
This proud man can no longer provide a shelter for his family. All he can do is stand and look at the second floor, perched upon a twisted pile of debris. Haidee Aki wonders about the long-term psychological impact this tragedy has had on his two daughters.
I think they have a deep scar on their heart which they never forget for the rest of their lives. A very terrible experience that they'll never forget. I wasn't there. I think my wife and children had a really terrible experience. This deep scar will never disappear for the rest of their lives.
At a time when parents are trying to mend their children's hearts, their own are breaking. Haidee Aki has invited us to his uncle's funeral, a mass burial on the edge of Kesennuma.
As a family member, I'm his nephew, so from my point of view, I'd like to cremate the body the proper way, give him a proper funeral, and put his ashes in the family grave. My uncle's all alone right now. I'm so sad and I'm so mortified. I just hate this tsunami.
Back at the elementary school in Kesennuma, Mike Maha-King has come across 4 little girls whose homes were damaged or swept away. There are many ways in which this event will undermine a sense of security for the children of the tsunami, and one of them is being homeless. What about your own houses? What happened to those?
Oh, more completely gone. Oh, like a cow there? So her house was literally moved by the water down the road and is now in a completely different place. So they haven't been able to go into it yet.
So your house started here and it moved all the way down here.
1 kilometer.
Your house moved 1 kilometer. My goodness.
Wow. So like surprise and shock and yeah, sad, very upset.
Girls, tell me what you remember about the day the tsunami came.
So she was in the car and they drove away and the wave was coming along behind them and she was literally like, I can see the wave coming from behind me, so we managed to escape in the car.
You must have been very frightened.
Yeah, very, very.
The ordeal of the tsunami has left so many of these children with dreadful memories.
superstitious, né? So when they have earthquakes, which are quite regularly, then they obviously worry that a strong earthquake could mean another wave comes. Yeah, definitely.
Constant fear, the loss of little friends' lives, homelessness. It's a psychological concoction anyone would want to remove from young minds. And yet, there are children for which all this is compounded. Japan's newest orphans.
When someone is bereaved, often they will be very sad for a while. They'll want to remember the person that's died. But if they died through traumatic circumstances, then it's almost as if you're too scared to be sad. So you want to grieve your loss, but actually you're too scared by the event of the death. And one of the problems I think that many children over there will be struggling with is they have to process the events that have happened before they can begin to make sense of their loss and grieve their loss.
On the top of the hill in Kesennuma sits the Ashihiga-oka Gukuen Orphanage. They're grateful for the food and supplies Mike brings. The stocks here have been running low.
Thank you. No, thank you.
This orphanage is already full, but in the last few days, staff have been asked to prepare to receive up to 10 more children. Children whose lives and families have been devastated by the tsunami. They've lost their homes and they'll have to get used to living somewhere like this, which, lovely as it is a very far cry from what they were used to. The real worry, though, for those who are going to try and care for them is what the psychological impact has been.
Principal Yoshihira Obara has the arduous task of addressing all of this. I asked him what he was doing to prepare for the new arrivals.
Still hard to think at the moment. I do think that mental care is the most important aspect. However, we don't have a specialist at the moment. We do have one psychologist who started this year, doesn't have much experience, so I'm not sure how much we can do.
Children in Japan are often described as kuni no takara. It means the country's jewels. The investment in and the treatment of the young is seen by some as the single most important area of social policy.
Well, generally speaking in Japan, they would be adopted into the extended family, and of course that's very common in the Japanese system. But adoption is normally for the continuation of the family name, so you only adopt people who you know the background of. The children where nobody does know the background of them, or there isn't a family member who can look after them, will probably go into the state childcare system. And once in children's homes, children tend to stay there for rather long periods of time. And that's mainly because there's very little alternative. There's very little adoption in Japan of children who have been in children's homes, and even less fostering.
It's often said that Japan has no natural resource except its children. So when there are no alternatives, the state takes them under their wing. We move south to our final destination, Ishinomaki. The smell of rotten seawater fills the air here. The tsunami swept 600 metres inland and covered half the city. At Hokkaido Elementary School, the 6th grade are finally graduating. Huge emphasis is placed on finishing one school and starting another in Japan. It's a highly emotional time, even under the best of circumstances. This gym was full of water before the parents cleared it, determined that their children would have their day.
At the beginning, there was so much devastation that I was told we might not be able to have a graduation ceremony, and my daughter was crying. Without the graduation, it'd be hard for her to switch her life from elementary school to a junior high school.
They sing about how they will never forget the days they spent together. The memories of one particular day will unite them forever. A new school term has just started in Japan, but for all the pupils on the northeast coast, school life will never be the same.
Up and down the coastline that was affected by the tsunami, schools are being used as evacuation centres, families are living in them. And for children who are hoping to get back to education, that obviously makes things very, very difficult. Teachers we've spoken to have told us that they're expected to take weeks before they're able to open the schools. And when they do, they're going to have all sorts of problems because other schools were destroyed. So they're going to have to absorb many more children than they had before the tsunami hit.
The next couple of months will be crucial for the children who've lived through this disaster. Many believe the education system in Japan could be their saviour.
I think the role and respect that is shown to teachers in Japan is extremely high. And in many cases, parents will be turning to the school teachers and asking them to explain to the children and to tell them what's going on. I mean, again, very different from the UK. Teachers get much more involved in the domestic sphere than they do here, so it's quite common. Well, teachers have to go to the homes of the children once a year at least to go and talk to the parents in the home sphere, and teachers are always sending instructions and ideas back to parents in the domestic sphere about what they should do and how they should help look after and bring up their children. And I think a huge role will now be played by the teachers in the schools in Japan.
As I prepared to leave the northeastern coast of Japan, I was struck by what little evidence I found of adults worrying about the threat of radiation. For the time being, they have more pressing concerns for this generation of youngsters who are facing the most challenging of times.
Well, some of the children we've spoken to have told us they're having nightmares, they're struggling to sleep, some of them. They're frightened to go back indoors sometimes because the earthquake shook the building so violently, and they're also frightened to go back near the sea because it came and they feel there might be another tsunami. Now, what that tells us is the damage caused by this disaster isn't only physical, and it's going to take as much effort to rebuild these children's lives as it is the towns that they live in.
This is a society that recognises you achieve far more working together than working alone. Youngsters learn this at a young age. Recently, the Prime Minister recognised the pain and worry the children of his country face in a letter to them. The future of Japan lies on your shoulders. Your laughter and smiles will give courage and hope. Let's walk together.
Scientists say that aftershocks from the huge earthquake a month ago may continue for up to 10 years. It's a daunting challenge for all those trying to help Japan to recover. Now, if you'd like more information on tonight's programme, please visit our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next time, though, good evening and thanks for watching. Next week, as royal wedding fever grips the nation, Tonight examines the long-running decline in the number of British marriages and asks why so many couples are choosing to say, "I don't."
Well, it was going to happen sooner or later, and tonight our surgeon is forced to face up to the past. But he's not the only one with secrets to share. It's the last in the series of Monroe, on the way at 9. Next, though, Nicola might just have met her match. We're back in Emmerdale in just a mo.